Let's get started then, dude. I've been pumped for this one because I think you've just thinking back to 2020 for you from a baseball perspective. I mean, I don't even know how to summarize it. Unexpected, maybe surprising, but I mean, the journey that you took that whole year was going from where you were probably back in March and April to pitching in the ALDS and the ALCS. I mean, when you think back at it and you think about sports psychology and just the mental makeup of yourself, what's like really the first thing that comes to your mind?
I mean, it definitely has to be the determination, not letting, whether it be setbacks in certain pitches not developing or your body not being where you need it to be exactly, it's just that determination to keep going. I guess a lot of guys, start to get down on themselves, but, the Astros mental strength coordinator is very good at keeping you going. So
That's why he's got that job.
absolutely.
Is there like one or two things that happened throughout the season or the year 2020 where it kind of sticks out, where this is like where I really faced adversity and this is where I really grew and overcame those challenges?
Absolutely. I mean, I was facing Mike Trout, and the whole spring training, Brent Strom was telling me, throw 3-2 breaking balls, throw 3-2 breaking balls, throw 3-2 breaking balls. I'm like, all right. And I have a trouble walking people, but in the back of my mind, I said, I got to stick with my gut. I got to stick with what Strom's been saying, what he believes in me. I got to believe in myself. I ended up getting a strikeout. I was a little off the plate, but that feeling of like, dang, I did it. Like, I can land a 3-2 breaking ball against, arguably the best hitter in the game, get the call I needed. I mean, that was probably like, hey, stick to your mental stuff, man, because it's that important.
Man, I mean, you can't pick a better player to build that confidence off of than
Yeah.
striking out one of the generational talents, right? And I think again, just one of those integral moments in your season where it just kind of that's where it all clicks. Like, this is where I belong. Because for a lot of the younger athletes that I talk to, when they start to make that next step up in their amateur leagues or even their pro leagues, it's almost a sense of fear of failing, a fear, do I actually belong? Do I deserve this shot? But like you said, there's just those moments throughout your career where it kind of clicks. Like, I'm here for a reason. I trust my gut and I show them my best stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the coolest thing about the Astros, they had a lot of veterans when I got there, from Joe Smith to Ryan Presley to Roberto Osuna to all those guys that have done it for a long time, man. And they've built such a culture of building each other up and making sure everyone knows they belong. I told many people this, but my first day in spring training and big league spring training ever, Justin Verlander came up and introduced himself to me, went out of his way and, hey, I'm Justin. I obviously said, yeah, I know who you are. Like, definitely, like,
Justin who?
Yeah. So, I mean, this that culture they built there, man. Like, when Presley comes up to you and say, hey, you're one of our guys, make sure you're ready. And this is, I just got done watching this guy break records, 40 plus scoreless innings in a row, like, the year before, like, I mean, that helps definitely in the mental side of the game.
Was there a point in your career where the mental side of the game, maybe its importance really started to click to you? Like, okay, this is something that I really got to focus on if I want to be who I want to be?
Absolutely. I took a step back in low A. I had a 1.70 ERA, and I played the whole season, and they sent me back. And I started talking to Bobby Cuellar, who's the pitching coach, and some of the other guys. And I obviously had said, like, you don't belong here, but, I mean, you're here. And it never really made sense to me, like, why the mental side was that important. Like, when it comes to stuff you're not even really thinking about, it's in the back of your mind. But the whole time I was there, I was like, man, I don't deserve to be here. But yet I was throwing terrible because I was focused on the wrong thing. I was focused on, I want to be in high, or I want to do this, I want to do that. And here I am I had like an 80 ERA in low A. I had a 1.7 the year before. And I'm like, wow. And I talked to AJ at the time, who, when I was with LA, was this mental strength guy. And, we did some activities and stuff with the team. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, I got to be a part of the team. I got to be here mentally to perform. And then after that, I took a line drive off my throwing hand. I thought it was broken. It wasn't broken. The ball was smashed. And then I was an all-star that year, right after that. So, I mean, all-star, I mean, it was good, man. That was when I knew, you mentally got to be there.
you've mentioned a couple of times kind of working with mental coaches or mental strength coaches. Are there one or two kind of mental exercises or just mental strategies that you've picked up that have meant the most to you and the most to your success?
I think it's a very corny one, but AJ with LA taught me, or taught the group. We were in a group session, and he said, I hate the words positive and negative. I hate it. He said, I like the words effective and ineffective. If you have to talk to yourself negatively to get a positive result, why am I going to tell you to talk to yourself positively? It doesn't make any sense. So whatever is effective for you, that's effective for you. So I think, the effective and ineffective thinking rather than positive and negative. Because if I got to go on the mound and say, you suck, to get everything I got out of my tank, then I have to do that. I can't sit there and be like, oh, you're good. You got this, man. Like, it's effective and ineffective was definitely the one thing that stuck with me this whole time.
I love that, because I think for a lot of athletes out there that are kind of figuring themselves out, they look to other athletes, like other guys in the pros or maybe other guys in college, and they try and mimic exactly what they do. But I think it's the realization that what works for somebody works for just that one person in that specific context. Everybody has their own strategies, their own values that they hold. Every person is unique, right? So I really like that line thinking. I'm probably going to steal that from my personal use, but effective versus ineffective rather than positive, negative. And I think too, that does a really good job of taking the value out of things. Because I think attaching value to a lot of things, whether something's positive or negative, that lends yourself more to a mindset where we have a lot of highs, but also a lot of lows. Whereas effective and ineffective, I think is a bit more of a neutral stance to things, which I mean, you can probably attest to as well when you're on that pitching mound, that the more neutral you stay in your emotions, probably the more success you have.
Absolutely. And I one person I love watching throw, no longer teammates, but, my throwing partner in AA was Dustin May. And people would always, get on him because he likes to yell when he throws. And it was my favorite thing because we'd have a bets in the bullpen. How many times Dustin going to yell today? But if he doesn't do that, who's Dustin May? Like someone can sit there, an older coach would come by. Not all old coaches, are old, when it comes to old ways and stuff, but, stuck in their old ways. But say someone came up to him and say, hey, we don't like that. Who's Dustin May? Why? Maybe he doesn't throw 100. Maybe he doesn't have that fiery, spirit anymore. Like, I mean, one of the coolest guys to watch because he literally does everything you're not supposed to do on the mound. You show all this emotion, get amped up. But it works. It's effective for him. So, I mean, I think AJ helped a lot of guys, in the organization with that. So,
and I mean, not only the fiery side of it, but also the fun side of it, being able to express yourself. Because going through your social media, I think on IG you had a post, and under the description you put, you're allowed to have fun along the way. And I think that's such an important lesson too, because some people I think have that perception that everything has to be like 100% serious. And like, if you're an athlete, like you got to be serious, can't have fun along the way. Cause if you're having fun, you're hurting the team. You got to be focused on getting better type of thing. But I think you put it nicely in that post that, man, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?
Absolutely. I work out here. That's where I'm at right now, Kings Baseball in Airmont, New York. And, I work with a lot of the kids and, a lot of them get serious. And there was 2 kids hitting off the machine. And I looked at them and they just looked, angry. And I'm like, you guys, like, what's going on? I never see you 2 smile. Like, what's going on? And, they started lighting up a little bit. But, like, this is, especially at that age, like they're 15, 16. It's going to be the best times of your life. Those guys, that camaraderie you get because it's going to build on to the next thing. You get to college, it's fun. You get that brotherhood, but it's still, a little bit more business, getting wins first, trying to get your rank up, especially at this age, man. I really don't like seeing kids frowning. Like, I like to have fun. When I teach lessons here, I'm laughing. I'm telling jokes the whole time because what's the point? What's the point of me coming here and working with you if you're going to be in a bad mood? Because then you're going to associate baseball with a bad mood. Every time you're at the baseball field, you're going to be angry. When I was growing up, this was my escape. Baseball was my escape, and I still treat it that way. So,
100%, man, 100%. Yeah. I think too, like you said, not seeing anybody frown. It's about taking the positive out of anything that's negative. I mean, negative things happen day to day. I think that's, customary. We can't avoid negative outcomes, but I think in every negative, there's a positive. And a kid like 15 or 16, like he could be frowning, he could be all pissed off because he struck out. But I mean, there's positives to take out because you figure out what does and what doesn't work. And every time you figure out something that doesn't work, you're one step closer to finding what does work. So I really like how you kind of focus in on there of having fun. And I think just more positively taking that positive outlook is so crucial, especially at that age.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially when it comes to training, if you can't turn that hurt, that pain you're feeling while you're lifting, going the extra mile, if you can't turn that into something positive, not even something effective in your brain, like I I don't know, like how are you going to get through it when you go through
Right.
college and it amps up even more? Or when you go to pro ball, I'm in Houston's organization that's 4 lifts a week. How am I going to do that? I mean, you got to turn some, maybe a game, maybe you're competing, laughing with your boys, like, something like that. But it's, seeing these young kids so focused, I'm like, man, you guys look like you're about to go take like the SAT or something. Like I don't know.
That's definitely not fun. So when you were
Yeah,
that age, were you able to have as much fun as you are right now?
absolutely. I had a rougher childhood growing up, and I had 2 super good friends from my travel ball team, which is probably the best baseball memories I have in my life when I was 12 years old. Logan Farrar, he played professional baseball, and Nathan Dukes, he played at Norfolk State. And, we went to separate high schools. So we would always, obviously compete with one another.
Yeah.
But when we were out there, they knew what I came from and stuff. When we were out there, it was like we were kids again, and that when I was that age, man, I had to be on the field. I worked at McDonald's, in high school. I had 2 jobs in high school. One at Games to You was an entertainment business. But when I was out there, nothing else mattered. Like it was so fun, like seeing all my boys on the team, even though I still talk to a few of them, Buddy Meredith, guys like that, but from my high school team. But just being out there, man, and just grinding and just the amount of fun we had, the bus trips, like there was never a dull moment. I think the kids are definitely doing that these days. But when we're in here training, I just remind them, like, it's going to come. This isn't going to last forever, man.
Man,
Enjoy every second of it.
what is it? Perspective is 2020 or whatever. Looking back at 20, whatever that quote is. I'm terrible with quotes, but like I think a lot of people lose sight in the moment of the situation they're in, and
Absolutely.
it's nice to hear kind of your mental approach to things because man, we talked a little bit about the season you had 2020 and being able to pitch in those high pressure situations, those ALDS, ALCS situations. I mean, that's why you play the game, right? And I think being in the right spot mentally to be able to appreciate the moment so that in 20, 30 years, you're not looking back like, oh man, like wish I was having more fun back then and whatnot.
Absolutely.
I think it's probably, as I talk to more and more pitchers on this podcast, I kind of get the sense that not everybody starts out as a relief pitcher. They kind of start out as a starting pitcher and make that transition at some point in their career. And I think, physically, that's obviously a different position somewhat, but mentally, I think more so. Walk me through, I guess, the beginning stages of that transition and how you were able to manage. Because I know you had started some games in college and some seasons, majority in starting in college. But just walk me through, I guess, the early beginnings of that transition from starting to relief and what kind of sticks out from that time period.
Yeah. So 2016, I got drafted, and I was with the Dodgers, and they were like, "Oh, we want you to relieve," and I was like, "Oh, all right." Like I'd started, and I had everyone likes to take a look at my walk column. I had a lot of walks, and if you really dug a little deeper, Coach Kozar wasn't going to let me cower down when I was having a bad day. So I probably had 3 outings where I didn't go more than 2 innings with 8 walks. So it's 24 walks right there in 6 innings. And it adds up, and it looks bad. Like, yeah, we don't think you have the control, and then that kind of plays in your head. But I was up for the challenge, to relieve for sure. Yeah, I mean, just the preparation is a lot different. It's a lot more relaxed, I guess, when you're in the pen. There's a lot more joking around, a lot more fun before you go in the game. As you're starting, you're locked in. You're either doing the chart, you're doing the radar, something. But when you're in the pen, it's just, not as much anticipation. You're loose. Obviously you stay ready, but mentally, it was tough, hearing that I wasn't basically good enough to be a starter. But I mean, I took it in stride, and I just started, instead of saving a couple bullets, I just started throwing letting it eat as soon as I got out there. So I mean, it's bittersweet. It's you want to have the ball in as many throws that you can get in a game. But, wherever I can help the team win, that ultimately makes me happy. So
exactly. And I think that's such an important lesson is everyone has a role to play on the team. And I think everybody strives for a certain role. But I mean, man, whether you're a relief pitcher, a starting pitcher, backup catcher, whatever you are, hitting coach, your value to the team is you just got to look for that value. It's there. I think it's just about changing that mindset and changing that perspective. Because like I said, and like I've talked to other athletes before, certain positions don't have the same stats as others, don't have the same opportunities. But I mean, as a relief pitcher, sometimes you can't ask for a more high pressure situation when you're coming in late in the game and the score's tied or you guys are up 1. Those are the things that, man, love it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was those situations, man, you live for those, getting to pick up your guys, bases loaded or something, coming in, just helping out. I think the coolest moment I had in 2020 was, a situation where I was just helping out the team to get to the next day. I think someone had gotten hurt early in the game. We were in Anaheim. And I was on the mound. I came in the mound. I was like the 5th pitcher in the game. And I had never thrown as many pitches. I think I went like 3 innings, maybe 50-plus pitches. And then another pitching coach looked at me and said, "Hey, we need you." And I was having that responsibility, having that, that there's no one coming in behind me. Like, I have to do this for the team. That was, probably one of the coolest moments I had. And it wasn't the greatest job. Don't get me wrong. Like, I walked up people. I was tired. But just that push through and knowing I could do it, for the guys. And it was awesome.
You've mentioned before kind of your walk stat line when you started off pitching in the pros. And I think you mentioned 24 walks and 6 inning pitches during those three outings with the Dodgers. As a professional, how are you able to balance? Like, obviously you want to focus on fixing that, but I think to a certain extent, you probably don't want to be too obsessed with it where the rest of your game crumbles or you ignore the rest of your game, right? How do you kind of find that sweet spot on working on certain things mentally, I guess, but not sacrificing other things?
Honestly, it came up this year or last year. I started the season off like 11 scoreless innings in a row, but I was walking 1 an inning. And, everyone's obviously wants to know why I can't stop walking people. And it was more of like I obviously don't want to walk people. That's not my thing, but I'm not going to get obsessed with it because I got to get the next guy out. Because if I don't get the next guy out, then we got to burn another pitcher. We got to, we're losing the game. So, it's always been one of those things where I've struggled with, but you can't really obsess with it. You got to just worry about the next hitter. And when it happens, it's like I'm on the mound. It's like, oh, here we go again as he's walking down to first. But I'm like, all right, let's forget that. Let's keep going.
One thing I like to do kind of at the end of these podcasts is have a collection of sports psychology quotes. So I have about 20 of them. I'll get you to pick a number though, between 1 and 20, and then I'll just read you the quote and then just let me know the first thing that comes to your mind or a point in your career where this kind of quote really rings true to you.
Okay. I'll go with number 7.
Number 7. So this is from Doc Rivers, I guess now 76ers coach. Always think of him as a Clippers coach. But he says, good players want to be coached and great players want to be told the truth.
Wow, that's definitely a good one. Yeah, I would say, there's those guys on the team, obviously not when you get to the big leagues, everyone's an ultimate competitor, but there's just players that are definitely coachable that are, yes men, and they'll do anything to hear something positive or, in their case, maybe effective. I don't know. But I had a time where one of my coaches, I won't say any names, came up to me and said, "You suck right now. You suck." And depending on how much longer you suck, depends on how much longer you probably play this game. And
talk about wake-up call.
I didn't cower down from it. I said, all right, let's go. And, that's what happened in my life. And, it worked for me, but yeah, I definitely think you got to rise to the occasion when you're challenged like that.
I think a lot of athletes, especially the younger we go, the more they struggle with that feedback. No matter how the coach presents it, I think any sort of negative feedback is so fearful to them. They get so anxious when they're told it. And for those athletes that are looking to take that next step and at least start getting comfortable with feedback, what would be one advice that you give them, or at least that first step to take for them to embrace feedback rather than run away from it?
Just know that, I'm not going to say all coaches aren't, like I say, all coaches aren't the typical bad coach, but, trust your coach. If you have a good coach and he's had success and he's had successful players, a lot of, good players come from really good coaches. And, sometimes those good coaches may be the ones that are cursing you out or the ones that are yelling, man. And it gets scary when you're young, but don't run away from it because they've seen a lot of baseball. If it's a guy that's been there for maybe a year and you look at his, his track record and he's only been, coaching for a year or didn't even do internships or something, maybe you're like, I don't know what this guy's yelling at me for. But, I had a lot of tough conversations in college with my college coach, my head coach, and see him as a father figure to this day, Craig Kozar. And, I didn't run away from what he was saying, and he had nothing to say but the truth. So just learn to embrace it and make it better. Like, I don't know. Like, I always wanted to prove people wrong. So while they saw me as that, I already was thinking of something in my head to prove them wrong, So I guess,
Where do you feel that drive came from to prove people wrong?
I've been doubted my whole life, man. I from any, opening the yearbook, high school, I didn't really get the accolades. One year I won like Northwest Regional Player of the Year, but I never made the All-State team. I never got the accolades that I ever really wanted, I was throwing 96 mile an hour in high school, didn't really, get all the calls I wanted. I got a couple of good schools that called for sure, but I'm looking at some of my friends and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm not as good as I think I am. I think in my head, but I was like, I got to prove them wrong. So, especially going to a smaller school, wanted to prove people wrong. Getting drafted, I wanted to prove people wrong. So, I don't know, man, just growing up, I grew up tough. My family, didn't have everything and people doubted me. Even people's parents when I was 8 years old were doubting me. So,
Wow.
So it was that I think it's been instilled through my family. Both my parents were military, and just that strict, like, we don't care, do better. You're better. Who cares if they're holding you back, and just do better, So always. And same thing in school too, though.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, that how you mentioned that even at age 8, that you were starting to get doubted. We can argue whether or not it's the right age to be introduced to things like that. But I think the younger an athlete is, the more impressionable their mind is. So you, again, like you said, growing up in a military family, dealing with that adversity earlier on, I think it gave your body and your mind more and more of a shot to adapt to it, to learn to overcome it, and to learn how to get past it.
Absolutely. The funniest thing about doubt, and I always had like a feeling like there were people that didn't think highly of me in high school. And my dad was in the stands. It was one of my last high school games. And one of the people's parents came up to my dad and said, you know what? I never liked your son, but I like him now. And my dad's like what? He came and told me that. And he was like, yeah, just so you know, like, there's people out there that don't like you just because they don't like you. They don't know you. I've never met these people. They just don't like you. And you got to prove them wrong. And, you just gotta have that mindset. You got to, man. Not everyone gets handed everything. Not everyone's, a top prospect. Not everyone's a first rounder, but you got to prove people wrong, man.
That reminds me too, as we kind of end this off in a couple minutes here, but reminds me of controlling what you can control, because you can't control what other people think of you. You can't control who doubts you. You can't control who believes in you. All you can control is whether you believe in yourself. And it sounds like we've talked about effective versus ineffective, that you believing in yourself and having that mindset of, I'm going to prove other people wrong, you're able to control that mindset. It's been very effective for you. And the success has paid off clearly.
Yeah, I'm hoping to keep it going, working with Scrubb, so hope it keeps going.
What's spring training days looking like for you?
A tentative report of 17th, but, world's changing these days, so we will see,
Yeah.
Nothing in stone.
Listen, man, wish you guys, of course, nothing but the best of luck for the upcoming season. For reference, I'm up near Toronto, so I'm still salty about Michael signing with you guys after it was reported he's coming with us. But man, even though some subtractions from that Houston team, obviously George, you guys looking like a hell of a team this year. So I'm wishing you guys nothing but the best and success, and yourself as well, nothing but success and health and a successful season.
All right. Thank you so much. And I appreciate it.
Take care, man.
All right.